Check, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2, testing. Hey, how's it going?
Good, you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember back in the day. Remember coming in and helping math class?
Yeah, totally,
I
yeah.
was like, I wonder if you remember doing that way back when.
Yeah,
That was a long time ago now.
yeah, and then, after that, I started working at the academy and kind of ended up doing similar stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. There's lots of math with kids that. That's what I want to do in math, but
Right?
I was doing that.
No, it just it's like a different world, a different time, but yeah.
Hello, how are you? Thanks, Roy.
You bet.
Funny how heavy this thing gets.
Hi, Sherry. How are you? Hi, Hava. Jacob,
Hey, Coach.
how you doing? Hi,
Good. How are
Sherry.
you?
Now it's like being in a hurricane and not having a lot of stuff around you to protect you, and you just see it all flying around. Uh, but it's normal for this time of year because it's kind of like well, it's just like hurricane season. It's so we're in hurricane season right now. So any news from the folks with e-finance?
Uh,
Are they
hasn't
still?
been too much. There wasn't there was VASBO last week, but there wasn't any mention of anything. So
See, I think the hurricane. We're in the eye of the hurricane with that one, so everybody's just kind of going, "Wow, what's going on?"
Sean Cousineau called me the other week
Mhm.
because I guess he was inquiring about how the transition went for just the coding on our software, because I think he was trying to get other districts to get on the coding. But
Yeah.
from what he was saying, it didn't sound like e-finance was going anywhere. So I was like, what's going on here? We're going to do the coding, but the software is like not working.
Yeah, really,
Not
it's like a
happening.
piece of garbage, so to speak. And well, it's hard when you've made the mistake of investing millions of dollars, and then you go, "Oops."
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the stuff that would make you want to jump off the Queechy Gorge. I mean, jeez. So I can understand, people's anxiety about it. But the thing is, the reason all of that happened was they didn't talk to you guys.
Right.
If they had brought you to the table, the end users, duh.
Yeah.
And then our consultants, every district has an auditor. So you bring
Right.
in the business managers and the auditors and you say, is this good or is this not? And if
Exactly.
everybody goes, hey, this is a really good product, then let's take the shot. But to
Yeah.
have people who don't know jack, they didn't even know the coding, you know?
Right.
I'm sorry. Anyways. I get really pumped. They don't like to see me come in that committee room when when that discussion comes. They have to invite me, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and I try to keep it calm until somebody does something stupid.
Yeah.
I think we're ready, Coach.
Coach, we're ready.
All right, right on schedule, as they'd say in the more perfect world. So it looks like we have a quorum. Actually, better than a quorum. Nancy said that she wasn't going to be able to make it this evening. So I'd like to call to order the community engagement meeting, our regular meeting for February 23rd, 2022. Yesterday was a really interesting day, being 2/2/2/2/2. Could you imagine being born? Well, you couldn't be born on that day because it only happens once every 400 to 600 years or something like that. So, anyways, that being said,
there was a story on the radio this morning on National Public Radio about children being born on that date at 2:22, in one case, room 2. So you can get even more ridiculous.
all right. That's amazing. So we should probably go through some of the agenda items that we have prior to getting into our engagement portion of the meeting, which will be more around budget. So I know that we have some approvals that we need to do for membership on joint committees coming up. Tom, would you?
Pull that up because I did not. I did not share that with everyone, but we do have two Hikori appointments.
Well,
And-
I think everybody knows that's been going to spent any time, you know, on H. Corey's page or their minutes. Actually know both candidates. Ann Reynolds was one of the original members of H. Corey, and she's decided to re-up, and the town has agreed that Ann would be a good candidate. So maybe we could start with her, Tom?
Yes, and the other is Patrick Ortiello.
Attilio.
Ortilio. That makes sense.
He's a Quechee resident, retired, incredible data person. I'll just say that he that's what he did for Hewlett Packard when he was in his regular work, and he has been volunteering, assisting different groups around the state with their data issues. I mean, right down to designing dashboards for some organizations. So he's one of ours. So you know, it's kind of exciting that he would be interested in being a full-fledged member of H. Corey.
Those, no, I don't have much else to say, but those are the two recommendations or the two applications for appointment on H. Corey.
Well, Russ, any comments, being that you and Ava are liaisons to H. Corey?
Sure, Coach. I think both of the individuals being proposed play a very active part on the committee and bring unique perspectives to it. So I think they would definitely, for Ann, the continuing place on the committee, and for Pat, the new place as an official member of the committee would be very helpful as we continue the important work of the committee.
Cool. Well, we can't get more solid a recommendation than that. Hava?
I concur. I think Russ covered it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So without further fanfare, would you guys like to do the honors of a motion?
All right, I guess I will try. I would like to nominate Ann Reynolds and Pat Attilio. Is that right?
Attilio. Yeah.
Sorry, Pat, to then be members of the H. Corey Committee for the town of Hartford and school board, select board and school board.
Yeah, I would second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think we should invite them by, come
Yes.
visit with us once. we accepted
For
them.
one of our
Yes.
regular, for one of our regular meetings, unless they're here
Yes.
tonight. I'm not sure that they came to the engagement meeting. So we can extend that invitation as a formality, but they've been actively involved. So this just kind of puts the bow on it, so to speak.
Mhm.
So unless there's any further discussion and an extended invitation, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Sherry, do you need any spelling?
He's nodding his head, yes.
Yes, okay, so Patrick's last name is Autilio, and Ann Reynolds is actually Ann Reynolds, Raynolds. Everybody probably gets that wrong.
Oh yeah, it started that way years ago. Yeah.
I've actually known Ann for 20 plus years. She was a school psychologist for us.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
go way back.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Sherry.
So the other business items, Tom?
Was there a business item about the town school charter? Is that the one you're referring to?
Well, we're gonna meet on that. We can always, firm that up once we have that check-in meeting with the Charter Commission.
Okay, yeah, I'm working on scheduling that. I've gotten a couple dates from folks, so.
Cool.
But I don't have any other business items. Refresh my memory if I'm forgetting something.
From other board members before, or Roy or Jacob, before we get started. Needless to say, this is a lot more informal than our regular ones, but that was the intent tonight. Oh, an announcement. I'll take that this opportunity. Oh geez. Well, I'll bring it up, a little later. I want to make sure I get the names right. But I think Roy, you'll be excited about this one because it's in your jurisdiction with the high school. So pretty cool event that occurred during the week. So Russ.
I guess I'm on, huh, Coach?
Yes, you are, sir.
And I think I'm going to lead off basically by correcting or ensuring everyone has a firm understanding of if they vote for the 43,687,968, it's actually going to decrease your tax rate. We're estimating it's going to decrease your tax rate by 8.8 cents per hundred. We're going from 1.6324 to 15448, which is approximately a 5.3% decrease. In the meeting on Monday, I mean, honestly, I think things got a little sidetracked or whatever, and I don't think that message truly came out. So even though there's an increase in spending, an increase of ed spending per equalized pupil, the actual tax rate is projected to go down. And so that is really the first thing I just want to make sure everyone's clear on. The fact that's what we're estimating for this particular point in time. And as I tried to explain on Monday night, it's a really convoluted method that brings us from an increase in spending to a decrease in the tax rate. And the budgeted expenditures are budgeted to increase by 2.7 million. But from that, our local revenues, which includes the $1 million the board has designated to buy down the tax rate, are increasing by 1.4 million, which results in a increase in ed spending of 1.3 million. And from there, as was discussed on Monday night, there's something called equalized pupils. And even though our student count is more than 1,700, we have 1,345 equalized pupils because there's weighting. Different classes of students are weighted differently. Like kindergartners are weighted very low, so are elementary school students. And the vast majority of our students are in the elementary school, so that is the way that results. And that number is down by 26.5 equalized pupils, not percent, equalized pupils. And since our spending is going up and the equalized pupils are going down, of course, the ed spending per equalized pupil has gone up to the 18,557.11 that you will see, the taxpayers will see in the warning when they come to vote on Tuesday. And that's sort of it's a calculation that may or may not really have meaning in terms of trying to figure out what our spending is, how it affects the tax rate, and judging how well we are being stewards of the budget. Because from that figure, you then have to take into account what's called the common level of appraisal, which essentially is a number that is supposed to represent the amount or percentage that Hartford's grand list approximates the actual property values here in Hartford. And that number has been continuing to go down as we've had real estate prices take off. This year, it's down to 86.76% from 93.33%. So essentially, as that number goes down, our tax rate will go up under the calculations. And then the other real issue is the fact that, or not issue, we're benefiting, is the yield number has gone up substantially. Normally, I think last year was about 11,800, and this year it's 13,846. My glasses on. And essentially, that number represents the per pupil education spending that would be raised statewide if tax rates were set at $1. So that works. That is the biggest benefit to our tax rate. That increase is really what is attributable to the decrease in our education property tax rate, because that serves to sort of reduce the number, because it's a comparison of the 18,000 to the ed spending per equalized pupil. Say that 3 times fast. And the yield. So essentially, it acts as the higher the yield, the less our tax rate, or the more our tax rate will go down, type thing. And what really didn't get mentioned is for those people who are subject to income sensitivity in their education property tax rate, the potential decrease is much greater. There's an example in the town report showing somebody with a homestead income of 50,000, and potentially their education tax rate is going to go down 15%. So that really helps those who are most at risk, but not being able to afford their property taxes. That number is very sensitive to your actual income, because as your household income increases, the decrease in your tax rate will decrease until you get to 89,999, and then there's a significant change in the calculations. Do any of my fellow board members have any questions about that? Okay. So the biggest drivers of the increase in spending are salaries and benefits. Benefits we really have no control over. The state made an effort to implement a system that will, in theory, was supposed to, in theory, control the cost of health insurance. It really didn't have the intended effect at all, because the health insurance is up significantly this year. And salaries are up, because salaries are our biggest expense. And because we're in is this the last year of the union contract?
Well, next year's a
Oh,
lot.
next year. Okay.
We negotiate next year, so. it'll-
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you, Tom. So we're in year 2 of a 3-year contract. And even with the increases to the teachers, given the rate of inflation, we actually made a good deal for the district type thing. It's the increase in their rates is much less than the current rate of inflation. Then in fiscal 22's budget, given COVID and all the related concerns, the district made a conscious decision to really pare back its spending on repairs and maintenance. As I recall, it was like 190,000 approximately. And now this budget brings it back up to what it would be a more normalized figure of about 490,000, I believe. Then the other 2 main cost drivers is the cost of our food service. If anyone has been to the grocery store, you know that the cost of goods are going up, as well as the food service itself has had to raise salaries or wages to stay competitive in today's market. Because I mean, I was just at the fine dining institution McDonald's, and they're paying $15 an hour. So we have to meet whatever that is. So that is budgeted to go up by $400,000. And lastly, we have the same issue with transportation costs. It's been, as parents know when they see Tom's email, there's been some days where one bus has to run late because they just don't have enough drivers. So that has gone up a couple $100,000. And that's really what has driven the increase in spending. I think from here, I guess the other thing I would like to talk about is the proposed 800,000 we're going to put into the capital projects fund. I know there were some questions about, was there a settlement? What happened to the money? And unfortunately, some of those answers are lost to time. All we can tell you is the money's not there right now. It was used for other projects and way before my time on the board. And I think just about everyone else's time on the board. Given the COVID and all the ESSER and related federal funds and the great job the business office has done in matching our budget to the allowable costs under these programs, we have a surplus. And as opposed to, and then with this 800,000, knowing we have 2 large roof projects, which are essentially repairs, enhancements, not really new work. So it's not generally a good idea to bond that kind of thing, because it would be like taking out a mortgage to change your oil or buy new tires type thing. It's a routine item, maybe not routine, extraordinary item, but still not necessarily any type of improvement. It's maintenance. So we're taking some of our $3.8 million surplus, one of which is going to buy down the tax rate. This 800,000 is going to be put into a reserve fund. And the benefit of the reserve fund is, as anyone knows who's tried to hire a contractor, replace a roof, those costs are through the roof, pun intended. So we're going to wait and sort of match the opportunity with what we have set aside, just so we're trying to be as prudent as we can and minimize the expense to the taxpayers. We can't put it off forever, because at some point there won't be a choice. So if we think about doing it in a planned manner, that's part of what this money is. And on 2020 costs, the roof replacements we're going to roughly be 1.3 million. So there's still another 500,000, but that we can probably work through the budget in a couple of years or two. And we're going to attack the biggest problem first, the Ottaquiche School. Because Dothan Brook has already had work done to it to sort of help stabilize. I think that's, Tom or
No,
anybody else want to add anything?
no, I think you covered it all. Thanks for the clarity. There's always
And,
a risk when so many numbers are thrown around that there will be confusion.
and I think there was confusion.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm going to do is make sure it's posted in public places without getting into a discussion that the tax rate is actually going down and how much it's projected to go down. And I'm willing to entertain individuals' questions, but on any of these public forums, under the open meeting laws, we can't get into a debate because we risk violating open meeting law.
The warning itself, the wording of the ballot question is actually required by the state of Vermont. So that's why that language is in there about the equalized pupil cost and the percentage increase. I personally think it's very confusing. Because it looks like it's a budget amount. It's not. It's the per pupil equalized increase, not the budget.
And not the amount to be raised through taxes.
Right.
And that's, like Tom said, that is prescribed by the state.
Yeah, we have to.
We have to
Every
use those
school in
terms.
The state uses that language. Different numbers, but the same language.
In essence, it's a statutory requirement.
Yes,
It's built into statute, and the Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Ed Fund, has the responsibility for adjusting that variable. And just think of it as like a computer program. And you have to enter certain factors into the program to get the end result. And that's what this is by design.
The people who put together our education funding program attempt to take into account the factors that could potentially impact how much money you could raise and how much money you had to spend. And in the context of the particular formula used to determine spending, it's an important number. The problem is without that particular context, it's almost meaningless. And you need to know how the formula works before it makes any sense at all. And if I hadn't been sitting and listening to conversations about the budget for more years than I want to think about now, I'd have no idea what it meant. And I truly think that we're not serving the public in any way by sharing that number with them.
I think we're just confusing them.
Yeah.
But you know, with all of the talk of transparency, you know, it's, you know, you're kind of caught in a, unless we can get somebody to simplify that explanation, you know.
No. The formula is actually rather ingenious, but it is far from simple, and it is far from easy to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And given the attempt to meet many different task masters when developing how we fund education, it's as good as you're going to get, but it ain't great.
For sure.
absolutely not. And in my personal opinion, it's designed to shock people. I think
I think there may have been an element of sort of trying to get people to pressure boards to reduce spending. I think that's one of the reasons it's put in that language and the requirement that it go into the ballot language. But without sort of a college level course on the actual formula used to determine funding and how it takes, as you said, what are the current tax values, what is the amount of property out there to tax, how accurate is the current evaluation of the property that is out there, all of those different things that they're trying to take into account. It's meaningless without that surrounding context.
Absolutely. And I think I will just conclude by ensuring or telling people this is our best estimate. The really frustrating thing about this process is the fact the numbers don't get finalized till the legislature gets out of session. We try to be conservative in what we represent to the taxpayers. And recently we've been successful because rates have come in below what we talk about in our budget presentation. And the last thing I'll say is the non-residential tax rate is actually going down 13.13 per 100. So it's even a larger decrease. Do we have any questions? Or wait a minute, Coach, do you want to take questions now or later?
Well, if we've got questions while they're fresh on people's minds and it's at that point of this part of the discussion, it would seem to make sense.
Okay.
We have 3 attendees, no hands up.
I know how to bore people, I guess.
When it comes to taxes, boring is good.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of folks that would probably agree with you on that one, Mr. Merrill.
Yeah, and if anybody is out there that wants more information about the lawsuit and the original roofs, I'm happy to provide that and dig that up. It's just was well before my tenure here. And, I understand what was done. I understand why it was done. So I don't think there was any issue with that. But it is relatively sort of ancient history. The roofs leak, and they have leaked, and now they're at a point where they're at the end of their life. So we sort of have to deal with it.
Yeah. There was a lot of discussion, and I probably should have thought to ask, unless Jacob, do you have access to your budget submission pages?
Yes.
One of the questions that came up repeatedly was in reference to the tracking around pupils, so the attendance chart that you use. And then the other one was the from 2003 forward, the changes in the percentage of tax rate. There was one page, I think it was page 24 in the as I
Yeah.
was yeah. And then 24 was one that you had mentioned as well, Tom. I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, unless I was thinking about something else, but. But I thought that it might be, being that we're clarifying, this might be an opportunity to show a much clearer visual of that page.
I can share screen.
Yeah. Roy's got it up if you want to share screen.
Sure.
Was it page 21?
That's it.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah. What was on 24, Tom? just out of curiosity.
Go forward 3. You know, I don't think it was 24. It was just 21 that I was referencing.
Okay,
Enrollment is
But the
24.
enrollment pages immediately follow that, so you can kind of track back where schools are at. Some of the numbers quoted, like I said, like Russ referred to, are extremely complicated and confusing around enrollment, because in a lot of places, our enrollment actually has increased. We've added teachers. In fact, we're talking about adding teachers at the K1 level next year at the elementary school.
right.
But the way that they weight students, it looks like there's a decrease. So it's really, really complex and not straightforward. You can't just draw a line from, you know, the number that was reported in 2003 or 2010 or 11 to now and say, oh, there's been a decrease or there's been an increase, because it's depends where it is. And we're seeing some nice enrollment increases at the elementary level. I think Queechee's enrollment is up to like 230. When I started, it was like 180 something, 190. So we've seen growth in both Dothan and Queechee, and actually a decline at a White River School. Nothing drastic, but decline.
So those two average numbers at the bottom, would you mind explaining those, Jacob? What those two averages are?
So that's just an average increase from the prior year of the general fund from year to year. And then on the other side, it's the average increase of the school taxes.
Which for, you know, that long a period of time, to have that be the average, we're under 4, clearly under 4 easily, you know, but you know, we've seen some organizations that have had, you know, 5, 6, 7%, you know, across the board for a long period of time. And that's, so I think that goes back to Russ's point that he had made earlier about due diligence around those numbers. And it's a tough one to just pull out of the, you know, out of the charting, because there are so many factors involved in getting to that number, you know, over time.
And it'll be interesting with FY23 because that'll be the first year that they're potentially enacting the Act 173, which is the change in the special education funding.
Oh, wow. That's right. That's right. That will give that chart a different look for sure.
And I think it's important to clarify that this chart just represents what's called the general fund. It does not include the collaboratives, the tech center, and all of that, this is the other part that's frustrating in the whole process, because here, the logical question would be, why aren't we voting on a budget of 33,549,080? And the difference being, or 800, being those programs I just alluded to, the tech center, the collaboratives, and various other programs. So that's what brings us to the 43. So it's really difficult, or you have to be very diligent in remembering what you're talking about and not get the terms confused.
Correct. Because as we've come to understand over the years, and this was another one of those questions people had. The reason for that variation is we pay for the Hartford students to attend, just like our neighbors spend for students to attend. So if we've got 20 students going to one of the collaborative programs and it cost X number of thousands of dollars, we pay the same X number of thousands of dollars as one of our partner schools do going to that program.
Right, and all of those programs that Russ just mentioned are, they're balanced, they're, the amount of money we expend in those schools for those schools to support those programs is recouped by the tuition that everyone pays to go to those schools, including what Coach just mentioned. So it's a zero-sum sort of game there. But we, Hartford School District, has to raise and appropriate the amount of money to sort of foot the bill to fund those programs, and then it's reimbursed the amount of the tuition. So that's why the budget figure on the warning that you vote on is 43 million. But the actual Hartford School District spending is the number in that chart on page 21. So it's a little, like Russ said, it's another confusing sort of calculation, but it does make sense when you think about it.
And
You're
it's
not
another
being
number.
Yeah, you're not being taxed on everybody else's tuition.
Right.
Exactly.
Additionally, the amount that we spend isn't entirely paid for through taxes. Parts of it are paid through federal grants and things. So the larger number doesn't reflect directly, and a smaller number doesn't reflect directly to the amount that we're raising by taxes. That's an entirely different number.
And what did someone say? Excedrin headache number 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had dark hair before I tried to learn these formulas.
Yeah, I remember. I remember when you started, Russ. You were kind of spry there. Yeah. So Roy, the little announcement that I was going to make, Mrs. Whitney at the high school, her class has been involved in some social justice issues, and they've adopted supporting the Vermont Native American tribes. So they actually testified before the House Ways and Means Committee in support of a tax exemption for tribal lands. The bill that they worked on passed the House last week, and the word on the street was Mrs. Whitney's class did an outstanding job. And so that's, or Miss Whitney, her class did an outstanding job. So please share that with all of the folks in the high school community, because that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Terrific news. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't even know she was doing that.
And the bill number was H556, and it's on its way to the Senate.
Good news, Coach. Thank you.
So our kids are rocking the house all over the place,
Literally the house.
Right. Little play on words there.
I'm sure you've seen the land acknowledgements that have been coming from the English department as well. So they've done some really nice work in this area this year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions, they know where to go, but contact Russ or contact me, anything about the budget or the reserve fund, or the old roofs and the history of the roofs. I love to tell that story. So I do have a lot of information about that.
Yeah.
In our school email address is listed on our website.
Cool.
According to the agenda we had been presented with, we were going to talk about federal grant funding. Is there anything particular to be said on that, or?
No, Roy is ready, chomping at the bit here to go. He's just waiting for coaches or Russ's direction.
Yeah, being that we're not being bombarded with other questions, I think why don't we give Roy a chance to share the federal grants discussion.
So what we've been doing throughout the school year, Kathy, Jacob, and myself, is trying to keep you folks and the community up to date with how the ESSER funds are being accessed by the different buildings and how the money is being used to offset the impacts of COVID-19. So, like I said, all the buildings have an opportunity to brainstorm and work through a recovery team to decide how they can better support their students and their staff so that the impacts of this pandemic are minimized to the best of our ability. And throughout the time, one of our goals is to ensure that the community is up to date on how the money, because you hear these sums of money throughout the state that people are spending, and hearing about building projects and things of that nature that are taking place in different school districts. So tonight, what we wanted to do is a brief reminder in terms of how we've spent ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, and then some lead in terms of how we're starting to think about spending ESSER 3, and give the community a chance to have access to a short survey where they can give us some feedback to make sure that they feel like we're meeting the needs of the community as well. And as I proceed through, Jacob, feel free to speak in at any point. So just for folks who haven't been attending all of the community engagements, I know most people don't miss one, Russ, because we've done a great job with this. I have put some links to some old information that we have shared in previous meetings, but I wanted to make sure if someone were to attend tonight and it was the first community engagement that they've seen, that they would be able to access previous shared information.
Just me for a second, Roy.
Yes.
And where would somebody who's new tonight, where would they find that information?
So it's true, because the video, they won't be able to click on the slideshow. So what I'll do is I'll make sure this slideshow is posted with the notes in the school board section of the website as well. Great catch, Hava. Although I can click on the links, not so much watching on YouTube.
Thanks for that.
So just some background on the ESSER funds, and much like people say, there's a lot of words, but the moral of the story is we're trying to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on our student population. We've broken it into 3 targeted areas, and when we look at how we're spending our funds, they go into three distinct categories: mental health and well-being, re-engagement and truancy, and academic success and achievement. So whenever we make an investment, we say, which area are we targeting with that specific investment? To keep people up to date, here are the amounts that we've been allotted. The ESSER grant that we're working on for this coming spring is the ARP ESSER, and that is the $2.4 million approximately. And we're breaking it up into some specific categories that we've stated. But the one caveat that you would say here is a certain amount is 100% dedicated to extended learning opportunities. And that's, Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere in the vicinity of about $400,000. Is that accurate?
It's 20% of the allocation, which amounts to 478,620.
Perfect. As always, we're looking at the ESSER funds not as something separate, is we're trying to braid it with our local funds and our title funds in an attempt to utilize the ESSER funds to try things and attempt to find new and creative ways to meet the needs of the students. But by braiding it with traditional funding streams, the opportunity to maintain them after the ESSER funds are dried up increases significantly. To give you folks an idea, we've shared this in previous meetings, but the concept of when we make I'll go for example here, culturally responsive education, we look at what did we pay for in local funding sources. The equity coordinator is an example where we paid for Maggie Ibrahim, and that's totally locally funded. But in the ESSER funds, we looked at some equity and anti-racism PD. So we weave the different funds together to accomplish a specific task. In the far right column.
And PD is what, for those who don't do education speak?
Professional development. Thank you, Peter. The far right-hand column is the column that people would find most interesting, in that if you've been following along every step of the way, these are the new spending that we're going to be looking to start this spring and leading into next year. And I have it broken down into the slideshow as well, but just if you're wondering how it aligns with, it's broken down by category, the mental health and well-being, and then how each of the funding sources has been woven together.
Roy, can you remind me where our new mental health clinician, you're probably going to get into that, aren't you? Am I jumping the gun?
Nope, you can ask a question.
Can you just remind us where the mental health clinicians and the interventionalists are going?
They're going out throughout the district. So, so these are, we've been putting them in each of the buildings, and these are additional numbers to supplement in the different buildings. So one of the mental health clinicians specifically was added to the high school, and a student assistance person was also added to the high school. And then the interventionists are being woven throughout the elementary schools.
Thank you for that.
And would you mind just giving a Cliff Notes version on what those folks do or represent?
Absolutely. So when you look at not so long ago, our students who had mental health needs that were beyond school counselors would access HCRS clinicians, and we moved from them going off campus to then partnering with HCRS and starting to house clinicians on site. We found that we were still not able to meet the needs of our community, so we've begun hiring some clinicians to the district as well, so that you have the access to an HCRS clinician if you're on that caseload within the school, outside the school, but you also can access a clinician within the school without being attached to HCRS now. Does that help, Coach?
There are
Yes.
some
Yeah.
barriers. Yeah.
Well, that is helpful, and the other thing, like the student assistance program,
Yep.
The people might have ideas what that's about.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you're looking at-risk behaviors when you're talking about a student assistance program, working a lot off the our youth risk behavioral survey that gets shared with us annually. A lot of the information off from that is where our student assistance clinician who works through that program is focusing on that data, working with our student population.
I'm compelled to ask one more question about
Yeah,
that.
totally. Yep.
So, and sort of on behalf of Nancy, who I'm sure would be asking this on her own if she were here tonight, but I'm just wondering, in that plan, how much of that is going towards, or what part of that is going towards sort of that social emotional development of that pre-K to age group that we've been talking about over the past couple months of really needing that extra sort of mental health support.
So in terms of the clinicians, I wouldn't have a specific answer on that one. I know that the interventionists are targeting the elementary school population. So that would be where, when you look at this screen, where those numbers are being targeted specifically.
Okay, thanks for that.
You bet. So if you look at re-engagement and truancy, some potential additions. Remember, these are all proposed, so we're still in the process of brainstorming and working with the recovery team. However, we wanted to share this with the community to be able to get feedback as well. Positions dedicated to extended learning opportunities. An example of where we're using that in the now, where this would continue, is with the bullet number 2. We have a contracted service person that we're working with who's coming in and working and providing outreach to students in a variety of different ways. But specifically, picture a student who's missed a tremendous amount of school, and it's hard to come back to school and immediately integrate into the curriculum taking place in the classroom. This person provides an opportunity to be giving some outside tutoring that would be able to minimize the gap in terms of what you had access to and where you're supposed to be on February 24th, I think today, or 23rd today is. Also assisting in for students who are struggling with a full day. So providing some educational opportunities for students who need a reduced day. So the concept of the 1 point FTE is something that they're considering for next year to expand upon the program that they're already working with. But it's really dedicated to, when you look at re-engagement and extended learning, the thing I would want people to start to connect for a dot is the concept of doing something different than we do in a traditional school. So it's something outside the traditional day, whether it be after school, like later in the day, but also in the summertime. So the first few times we said extended learning, I think people immediately went to, oh, that's purely summer school, but it's anything outside of traditional school day is what we're looking at here to better meet the needs of students who 8 to 3 is just not the perfect answer right now. Another more supports in terms of homeless support and translation services. Those are 2 areas that we've seen a significant increase over the last 2 years. For the homeless supports, the number that has shown the most increase from my perspective is transportation. You talk about the shortage in help just in general. Finding a way to purchase transportation for a student who has been displaced and wants to continue accessing an education in another school district, which is absolutely their right. Finding a way to get them from our district to their school of origin has become increasingly expensive because there's just a lack of opportunity right now. The translation services is just from increases in students moving into the district who could use that as an additional support. And that in what we've come with a conversation is the better we do our translation services and our ELL supports for students, the more appealing Hartford's going to be for people moving into the area and trying to decide what school district do you want to move to. And we're just trying to make sure we're doing everything in our power to remove barriers so that they can access their education. Family service coordinator, engaging marginalized population. That's a proposed. It's not a position that we have at this moment, but the concept is having someone who could be dedicated to working with our community and finding out what are the barriers to coming to school, what are the barriers to being successful in school, and helping to brainstorm with the community and the families to and the local services to remove those barriers, or to find out, are there services that we could be doing in-house that would make school a more appealing option, and in theory really combine well with the extended learning opportunity people, because then those opportunities would be offered either after school or in the summertime. Equity and anti-racism professional development. If you remember correctly, earlier in the year, Tom was in an attempt to help teachers with their workload. We removed some additional professional development and additional work in some specific areas. Equity and anti-racism is one of those areas that we ended up removing some professional development time from in-service. So we're just looking at reinstituting that next year and continuing our work. Looking at academic success and achievement, the one thing that I would have people keep in mind is there are going to be times where you look at specific items in re-engagement and truancy and academic success and achievement, and you'll have a hard time teasing out which is which in which column. So just know in some cases we pick different categories, but there's so much overlap in between those two categories. We're looking at increasing our pre-K kindergarten interventionists who will be looking to, once again, finding ways to provide additional supports to students who have struggled to keep up with what's going on in school. Instructional coaches. One of the things we're looking at with our instructional coaches this year is we've been focusing on our coaching and take it in terms of coaching for equity. So we're really looking at our instructional practices and our instructional practices equitable. And as we've started to do that work, we're just seeing an increased need that if we're going to truly impact our instructional staff, we're going to need more coaches to be able to do that. Summer school and tutoring. This will be to continue what we shared with you folks from last summer. We're going to look to our teaching staff to see who's interested in providing opportunities. We're looking at the principals to do some recruiting in terms of specific needs that they may have. But we're also going to increase our commitment to the immersion Montessori school. That was so successful last year and got such great feedback that we're just looking at increasing our commitment with them. What we're looking at is 10 students in the pre-K age group, 20 students in the K2 group, and 20 more students in the 3-5 group. And we'll be looking at between 6 to 8 weeks of summer programming. It will be done in a combination with some of the students on their site. The pre-K will be done on their site. And then the 40 students that are K5 will be done on the Dothan site, again, similar to last year's model. And then right now we kind of have a nebulous after school programming bullet set. we're going to be partnering with the rec program and again, looking for staff members looking to provide opportunities for students after that 3 o'clock hour.
Uh,
Yes.
just a quick reminder, Vermont After School will be putting out additional grant applications because they received a separate pool of funds for extended learning activities for the next, I think it's 4 years, was their appropriation. So I would keep an eye on their website. It's vermontafterschool.org, I think.
Excellent. Thanks, Coach. Back to Hava's question in terms of what are we doing that's truly targeting our youngest population and helping them to be successful. The occupational therapy is going to be focused on that, and increasing the 1 FTE there is just hitting that population before it's more in a proactive approach as opposed to waiting for it to be identified. Bullet 2 is continuing our work in terms of the language arts curriculum development. And the last bullet is tied much to the increase in translation expenditures. We're going to be adding an English language learner teacher. ELL teachers are there to support students who English is a second language. And it is right now we have one person that's for the district. And the goal is to have a second person so that they can be more targeted and more purposeful with our ever increasing enrollment. So before I ask any questions here, Jacob spends a tremendous amount of time with Kathy and I as we try and process the needs from the different buildings and then try and find ways to fund it. Anything to add, Jacob?
I think you covered everything perfectly, Roy.
Oh, that's never true. That's because Kathy's not here. So the world according to Roy tonight. So there's not many people on the call, and the board has had an opportunity to ask questions throughout, but the three questions. Sorry?
If you don't mind, I do actually have a question.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, so for obvious reasons, there's been a focus on the needs of disadvantaged children. But have we thought at all about meeting the needs of the gifted children, those who in the arts programs, music, the sciences, what we can do to enable them to also reach their full potential?
I would say in terms of summer programming, the arts, we are increasing our options this year. We've added a Broadway performing arts program that we're going to help fund through some of the extended learning, the summer programming.
Right.
And then in
terms
of, sorry?
I'm sorry. It's just that a lot of kids who didn't have chance to do band as the way they would like to, or do musicals because they had to do it different ways or whatever. There's lots of, the entire population was disadvantaged and affected by COVID. And I just want to make sure that we think as much as and broadly as we can about the whole population.
Well, I think, Peter, that's a point well taken. And when we look at those questions for the community, how has COVID affected your family or your child? Those opportunities that we had, for example, the Governor's Institute, which is a summer program. It was nowhere near as highly attended as it had normally been, and that's a very experiential, directed type of program. So I mean, they do plays, they do work on legislation, they do entrepreneurial activities. So it's pretty far reaching, but because of COVID, they weren't able to get into those activities at the same rate. So, I'm really pleased that you're asking that question in your survey. So that if a parent says, "Yeah, what about my kid? They used to be able to go to this, or if they were interested in that, and they've been staring at a screen for 2 years." So anyway, thanks.
So, Peter, one clarifying question with yours, just because I'm taking notes since I have you personally here. So when you think of the music, the arts, and the honors, I can see the music and the arts in terms of the honors. Are you thinking that?
So I know we have existing programs that would allow, or would pre-COVID allow, students to attend classes, say at Dartmouth, or engage in distant learning classes on subjects that they were deeply interested in that we didn't offer. There have been a lot of things that we have done to enable students to grow beyond what we can offer internally. And I'm just wondering if we're looking at that with this source of money, those kinds of programs, whether it's additional resources for the drama program, additional resources for, as we said, the music program, if there were things that could be done to help the science, whether it's chemistry or biology or whatever, or even, advanced mathematical courses or something like that, for that population of students, being not as challenged as they could be because they're able to master the ordinary coursework easily, can be just as detrimental. So being able to continue to challenge them, to give them opportunities to achieve, is, we by force are always sort of focusing on the center of the bell curve, because that's where the most people are. We need to, and we are remembering that we need to pull those at the bottom of the curve up, but we also need to let those at the top of the curve, go as far as they can, because every person who we help, we're doing the right thing.
And I think that's a point well taken. And when we think about the options, additional options for actually any student of interest, it could be as varied as someone taking a class in canoe making to a student taking a class at MIT. And
or possibly even a highly skilled athlete,
right,
in some ways,
exactly,
where you're meeting their needs.
So going to a special camp,
Yes.
But we could, I guess the questionnaire, maybe we might formulate a question based on what Peter's shared. If you had the opportunity, and we are looking at, expansive ideas, if you had the opportunity to have your student engaged in, a special, program, next summer? What would it look like? Or is there something that we can help as a district help your child get there? But I think that just makes good sense, as another option as you're building your think list.
Absolutely. And for folks, when I'm going to put this slideshow on the site for folks to be able to see, but the link here is to a survey. It'll be a live link, and folks will have an opportunity to put those requests right in there, Coach, so that we can have a document.
Cool. It's exciting, actually, when you think about those options,
Yeah, and I think we'll have some, we'll have some work to do, the board and the administration, when the ESSER funding begins to dry up. I'll be pushing you and all of us to figure out what has worked so well that we need to continue to fund it, and just informing you about maybe what hasn't. So that's always the catch with these federal grants like this. I'm old enough to have lived through ARA funding or ARA funding in the early 2000s, and it was great while it lasted, and then it all dried up, and we went, okay, so now what do? We either force these into the local budget or we throw them overboard. And so just keep encouraging Kathy and Roy to make sure they're keeping data to show whether things are successful or not. And we'll have to grapple with that. We don't want to have a cliff where all these nice services end.
Cliffs are no fun. Cliffs are no fun.
Any other questions? I see we have two panelists. I don't see any hands raised, so I didn't know if anybody else from the board. Oh, we do have a hand raised. Can you let Christina Tardy?
Christina.
Hi.
Hi, Christina.
I'm not sure if this was the time. It feels like you guys were talking about the budget and funds, but I have a question about masks and how those were gonna be dealt with. So, is this a good time to ask that question?
Yes.
All right. So, I will address the Agency of Education, their article on the state of Vermont to end universal mask recommendation for highly vaccinated schools, February 28th. So there was a post about how that's recommended, that schools, and I guess it's something up for discussion. I'm not sure if it's something that the schools have to do or not, but I didn't hear anything about that. So I think it's time that we talk about it. And I did listen to Governor Scott on February 15th when he addressed this. So what I took from it and what it should be the start of the discussion is that in Massachusetts, Connecticut, February 28th, they're not going to require masks in the school. In Rhode Island, is March 4th. They're not going to require masks. Senator Scott said that his first step is, as a guidance, if the school is vaccinated 80%, that's when you should lift up the mask requirement. And again, everybody's saying this is just a recommendation. The school district has to talk about it. And I want that conversation to start. I think it's time to address that. And I want to know, when is the school gonna stop the mask mandate? Are we gonna go by 80% vaccination status or what? Like, what's the point? At which point we're gonna say we're good now. Thank you.
Coach, do you want me to talk a little bit about some of the particulars there and what I
Yes,
plan to
I
propose?
was going to ask, just so Christina knows, we've had a very strong COVID guidance committee that has been working with the administration to keep our kids safe in the district. So I guess at this point, I'd like to turn that question back to Tom, being that he works directly with that group or his COVID response team. You know, it's made up of. Tom, would you give a quick overview of who's on that working group?
Yeah, I mean, primarily right now, it's the school nurses and Roy and Kathy and myself. But this particular issue obviously is at the forefront of our work with the superintendents and the my colleagues around the state and the Secretary of Education. And what's going to happen, Christina did a really nice job of sort of summarizing all that. But on the 28th, the governor is expected, and several have actually said that he will lift the mask recommendation for schools. And all that means is he's going to actually revert to the stipulation that was made back at the beginning of the school year, but was never implemented, which is when any school, any individual school, not our school district, but any of our 6 large schools and even the Wilder school, attain a vaccination rate of 80% or higher for the eligible students, which basically now is everyone, except for pre-K students, you can opt to not wear masks. So at that point, the school board, or in some districts, it's the superintendent's decision, can say, okay, we're not going to wear masks. Or they can say, no, we're going to continue to wear them. Or even right now, you could say, we don't want to wear them anymore. But I would very, very strongly advise that we don't do that while there is a recommendation from the governor and the Department of Health to wear masks, putting the district at a lot of liability. So if you did reach the 80% in any particular school, I think we should consider, what the school board, the administration wants to do. And I think that'll be a big decision. I think there's many folks in the school, teachers and staff, that would be very, very concerned about the removal of masks at this point. We may be getting there. I think it's something that we need to deliberate over. But that's how that goes. It is a recommendation from the governor and the Department of Health. So there is no emergency order, so they can't mandate it, but yeah, it would be highly illogical, I think, to not wear masks until that recommendation is lifted. But again, we're not near but we are not close to the 80% vaccination rate in any one school right now. The last time I checked, the highest was around 63%, 60% at the high school. However, those numbers are not that accurate. Those numbers are calculated by our nurses. When and if the governor lifts the mask recommendation, the Department of Health is supposed to do their own data, put their own data up on their website for each school in the state of Vermont. And that data will be much more pure in the sense that they will take that right out of the vaccination records for the state of Vermont that are required for physicians to keep and medical personnel to keep on all the children. that had to go through several hurdles before they could actually get that data. So that will be nice because it will be very clear and it'll be very consistent across every single school district rather than anything that the nurses have created from their records. And those records are just inaccurate because the nurses can only access so much data and they only, some parents don't report it and there's a lot more variables. So questions about that? Concerns? I would love to know what, I intended to put it on the agenda for the next regular meeting.
Coach,
Yes.
as the amateur parliamentarian for this organization, I'm a little concerned that we don't go too deep into the conversation because we haven't warned it.
Exactly.
So I think it's entirely appropriate to sort of explain where the governor is at, but I would be worried if we got too deep into a conversation.
Where we are or may be. So I'm with you. But in response to Christina's question, I think that it's as important an issue as it is, and our March meeting, well, actually that'll be the reorg meeting too. So the first meeting in March, but we could, we'll have enough information at that point, from the state to have a reasonable presentation, from the administration, and then a further conversation at that point. So just thinking in terms of, planning, that would make sense for that.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry if I went too deep into it, but
No, you didn't. You were. I think it was a clear response to the question without getting into what we're going to do.
There is a lot of confusion, so I've been trying to clarify that with people.
Right. Were there any other hands, Roy, that you spotted?
I don't see any others.
We've realized lately that a lot of people watch the meeting on cable access television. So they put it on while they're cooking and getting kids ready for bed and doing homework. And so I've heard a lot of people view the meetings, but they don't actually log into Zoom.
Right. And that's the thing. Our and CATV does such a good job with the documentation of the meetings and then access to them, because I've gone back, periodically when they go, did we really talk, and you can go into the archive and there it is, so it's pretty handy.
And just a reminder that there is the survey is built into the slideshow, and that will be shared in the school board notes that are shared on the website, so that folks that do want to share something with us to make sure that their voice is heard, we'll be sure to add the notes.
Great.
I assume, Tom, that we'll be sending out a notice to the wider community as well, inviting them to participate in that survey.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, not to speak for Russ, but I'm gonna say that either he or I will try and grab that link and put it on our Facebook page if you like.
Cool. That'll be another access point for the community to reach out to. So any other, since there's no other questions or hands being raised at this point, is that okay? Yeah, it looks like Christina's Is your hand still up, Christina, or?
Yes, I understand that this is not a time to go deep in the subject, but I do believe it has to be put out in a format that is part of the agenda and there's more information presented to people. And I understand we're waiting for the state, but I understand that there's a committee and it sounded like there's a school nurse and a superintendent involved. But I feel like
No, there's 7 nurses. There's 7 nurses involved on that group. And then the superintendent and the 2 assistant superintendents. So it's a group of at least 10 people. And that's excluding any resources that they lean on, because we're fortunate to be the regional center for the health department. So we have a really expansive relationship with the Department of Health. And I know, just because I know that, they rely on that resource pretty heavily, so it's a process that we have to be very careful about. When Mr. Merrill mentioned, the open meeting law, we can't really get too deep into that question, Christina, because we haven't officially said it's part of the discussion. And and in some cases, the not that we have to worry about the open meeting law police, but it's just a good practice.
It's only fair to let the public know what we're going to talk about so they can either listen or participate. And if we go on and have the conversation without having let them know it was on the agenda, we've not been open and transparent.
But it is fair to say we will be putting it on an agenda, right? I mean,
It's going to be on the next agenda, actually, because it'll be following the notices coming out from the state. And, there are very specific dates that have been discussed by the state. So we have to be able to respond to those questions. So any other? No, go ahead, Peter.
Well, I always get to have the fun of doing this. Hearing no other questions or issues, I move we adjourn.
I would second that.
That's what I was waiting for. Was for the second of that one. And before we vote, I just want to make a quick comment. I'd really like to thank, our school administrators, Sherry, for all of the work you do, for helping to keep us, organized and out of trouble with the open meeting police by keeping our minutes, up to date. And Tom, you and your team, rock the house. And that's what makes our job a lot more palatable, that's for sure. And Russ and Hava, your excursion into community engagement has really been tremendous, especially this year, and getting it on our calendar, our work calendar. That's pretty powerful. I know some of our colleagues around the state are looking and just going, "You guys do what? You mean, and how?" So kudos to you guys. So I guess at this point, I'd like to ask for all of those in favor of adjourning the meeting.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. And be safe out there. They're saying something weird's going to happen with the weather. So until it happens, we'll. But if it does, watch out. Night all.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks so
And
much,
looking
everybody.
forward to seeing you in the new school year for us, or at least
Yeah,
I
right.
guess not a school year, but what is it? The new board year?